What if I told you that one of the most important life-saving inventions of the 20th century, the material used in body armor, in spacecraft, in airplanes, and in extreme sports equipment, was created by accident? And what if I told you that the person who made this discovery was a woman who never intended to be a research chemist at all? A woman who was told her groundbreaking discovery was a mistake, that her solution should be thrown out, and that she was wasting company time. This is the story of Stephanie Kwolek, the woman who invented Kevlar, and it's a story that's going to make you question everything you think you know about scientific breakthroughs. Because this isn't a story about a carefully planned experiment. It's a story about intuition, defiance, and the courage to trust your instincts when everyone around you is telling you that you're wrong. By the end of this video, you're not just going to know how body armor was invented, you're going to understand that some of the greatest discoveries in history don't come from following the rules. They come from having the guts to break them. The story begins not in a high-tech lab, but in a small town in Pennsylvania, where a young girl's love for fabrics and fashion would, against all odds, lead to the creation of a material 5 times stronger than steel. Stephanie Kwolek never wanted to be a chemist. Born in 1923 in New Kensington, Pennsylvania, her dream was to become a doctor. She was fascinated by medicine, driven by a desire to help people. But medical school was expensive, and her family didn't have the money. So she came up with a plan. She would get a job in a scientific field, save up for 4 years, and then pay her own way through medical school. It was a practical solution, a temporary detour. Or so she thought. In 1946, with a chemistry degree from what is now Carnegie Mellon University, she walked into the offices of DuPont, one of the world's leading chemical companies, looking for a job. The man who interviewed her, Dr. W. Hale Charch, a research director who was already a legend at DuPont, told her that he'd let her know his decision in a couple of weeks. This is where the story could have ended. But Stephanie Kwolek wasn't the kind of person to wait by the phone. In a move that was both incredibly bold and completely out of character for a young woman in the 1940s, she looked Dr. Charch in the eye and said, "I'm sorry, but I can't accept that. I have another job offer, and I need to know your decision soon." Charch was stunned. No one talked to him like that. He turned to his secretary and said, "Get her an offer. We're hiring her." He later told Stephanie that he'd hired her because she had the courage to ask for what she wanted. That single moment of assertiveness didn't just get her a job. It set the stage for a career defined by her refusal to back down. Stephanie started working at DuPont's pioneering research laboratory in Buffalo, New York. It was supposed to be a temporary job, just a way to earn money for medical school. But she quickly discovered something unexpected. She loved the work. She loved the challenge of solving complex chemical puzzles, the thrill of experimenting with new polymers, and the collaborative spirit of the lab. The medical school dream didn't disappear, but it started to fade into the background. She was good at this, really good, and she was making a difference, contributing to innovations that were changing the world. In 1964, Stephanie was working on a project that most chemists would have found incredibly boring. The goal was to develop a new, lightweight, and super strong synthetic fiber that could be used to reinforce radial tires. At the time, steel was used for this purpose, but it was heavy and inefficient. DuPont was in a race to find a better alternative, especially with an impending gasoline shortage on the horizon. Lighter tires meant better fuel efficiency. The work involved creating long chains of molecules called polymers. The process was tedious and often frustrating. You'd mix different chemicals together, heat them, and hope that they would form a stable, spinnable solution. Most of the time, they didn't. You'd end up with a useless lump of goo. Stephanie was working with a specific class of polymers that were notoriously difficult to dissolve. To turn them into fibers, you first had to dissolve them in a solvent to create a liquid crystalline solution, which you would then force through the tiny holes of a device called a spinneret. For weeks, she tried everything, every solvent, every temperature, every combination she could think of. Nothing worked. And then one day, something strange happened. She mixed two chemicals, and instead of the usual thick, clear, molasses-like consistency, she got something completely different. The solution was thin, cloudy, and almost watery. It looked, by all accounts, like a mistake. Based on everything she knew, based on all the established rules of polymer chemistry, this solution was a failure. It was supposed to be clear, not opaque. It was supposed to be thick, not thin. Any other chemist would have thrown it away and started over. But Stephanie had a hunch, an intuition. She remembered her childhood fascination with fabrics and sewing, how she learned to identify different materials by their look and feel. Something about this strange, milky solution felt different. It felt right. She took her beaker to the technician who operated the spinneret, a man named Charles Smullen. He took one look at the solution and refused to use it. He said, "This is not a spinning solution, this is a mess. It's full of particles. It's going to clog the holes of the spinneret." He was right to be worried. The spinneret was an expensive piece of equipment, and a clog could take hours to clean. Stephanie insisted. Smullen refused. This is the moment that defines her career. She could have walked away. She could have accepted the judgment of the expert, the man who ran the machine every single day. She could have thrown out the solution and admitted defeat. She didn't. She kept pushing. She argued. She pleaded. She used every ounce of persuasion she had, relying on her reputation as a careful and meticulous scientist. She wasn't a reckless rule breaker. She was a professional who had a strong, unexplainable feeling that this was important. Finally, reluctantly, Smullen gave in. "Okay, Stephanie," he grumbled. "I'll spin it, but don't blame me if this whole machine gets gummed up." What happened next changed everything. The solution didn't clog the spinneret. In fact, it spun into a fiber more easily than any solution they had ever worked with before. And when they started testing the properties of this new fiber, they couldn't believe the results. It was astonishingly strong and incredibly stiff. To give you some context, nylon, which was considered a very strong fiber at the time, has a stiffness of about 20 grams per denier, a unit of fiber density. The theoretical maximum stiffness for a fiber was thought to be around 40 or 50. Stephanie's new fiber had a stiffness of over 100. The numbers were so high that they thought their testing equipment was broken. They tested it again and again. The results were the same. This wasn't just a new fiber. This was a new category of material altogether. So what had Stephanie discovered? She had created the first ever liquid crystalline polymer. Inside her strange, cloudy solution, the rigid, rod-like polymer molecules had, against all expectations, lined up perfectly in the same direction. When the solution was spun, these perfectly aligned rods formed a fiber with a highly organized internal structure. It was this near-perfect molecular alignment that gave the fiber its almost unbelievable strength and stiffness. Stephanie hadn't just stumbled upon a new material. Her intuition had led her to a new principle of polymer chemistry. She had proven that you could create incredibly strong materials by getting rigid polymer chains to organize themselves in a liquid state before spinning them into fibers. The entire lab was buzzing. They knew this was huge. The race was on to understand, replicate, and scale up the discovery. Stephanie's temporary job had just led to one of the biggest breakthroughs in the history of material science. But the story of Kevlar was just beginning. It would take years of further development by a team of scientists at DuPont to commercialize the fiber. They had to figure out how to produce it on an industrial scale, how to weave it into a fabric, and how to prove its effectiveness in real-world applications. The original goal was to replace the steel in tires, and Kevlar worked beautifully for that. It made tires lighter, stronger, and more fuel efficient. But DuPont's researchers quickly realized that the potential of this material went far beyond the automotive industry. Its most famous application, of course, is in body armor. Before Kevlar, bullet-resistant vests were made of bulky layers of ballistic nylon. They were heavy, uncomfortable, and offered limited protection. Kevlar changed all of that. Here's how it works. Kevlar is a woven fabric. When a bullet or a piece of shrapnel hits a Kevlar vest, the fabric's tightly interlaced fibers catch the projectile, absorbing and dissipating its energy. The fibers are so strong that they can stretch without breaking, effectively forming a web that traps the bullet. A multi-layer vest can stop most handgun rounds, preventing them from penetrating the wearer's body. It's not an exaggeration to say that Kevlar has saved thousands of lives. Police officers, soldiers, and security personnel around the world rely on it every single day. But the applications don't stop there. Because Kevlar is not only strong, but also lightweight and resistant to heat and corrosion, it has found its way into an astonishing range of products. Aerospace. It's used in the construction of airplanes, helicopters, and spacecraft to provide structural strength without adding weight. It's in the ropes that held the landing bags on the Mars Pathfinder rover. Sports. It's used in skis, tennis rackets, and bicycle frames to make them lighter and stiffer. It's in the sails of racing yachts and the helmets of professional athletes. Safety equipment. It's used in cut-resistant gloves for industrial workers, in fire-resistant clothing for firefighters, and in ropes and cables that are stronger than steel. Consumer products. It's even used in some high-end smartphones to make their casings more durable. Every one of these innovations can be traced back to that one moment when Stephanie Kwolek refused to throw away her cloudy, milky solution. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the greatest discoveries are hiding in the results that everyone else dismisses as failures. Stephanie Kwolek passed away in 2014 at the age of 90. She never did go to medical school. Instead, she spent 40 years as a research chemist at DuPont, earning 28 patents and a place in the National Inventors Hall of Fame. Her story is remarkable not just for what she discovered, but for how she discovered it. It's a testament to the power of scientific intuition, that gut feeling, that inner voice that tells you to pay attention, to look closer, to question the established rules. In a world that is increasingly driven by data and algorithms, Stephanie's story reminds us that there is still a place for human insight, for the kind of creative leap that a machine can't make. She saw potential where others saw a mistake. She trusted her judgment when the experts told her she was wrong. And she had the courage to follow her curiosity, even when it led her into uncharted territory. Think about how many other great discoveries might have been thrown in the trash because they didn't look right. How many breakthroughs were missed because someone followed the rules instead of their instincts. Stephanie Kwolek's legacy isn't just a fiber 5 times stronger than steel. It's the idea that true innovation often begins at the edge of failure. It's the proof that sometimes the most important thing a scientist can do is to refuse to take no as an answer. The next time you see a police officer on the street, or watch a spacecraft launch into orbit, or even just use a product that's built to last, remember the woman who made it possible. The accidental chemist who was just trying to save up for medical school. the quiet pioneer who listened to her gut and, in doing so, changed the world forever. She gave us a material that protects and enables, but she also gave us a story that inspires, a story that teaches us to be curious, to be brave, and to never be afraid to challenge the way things are done. Because you never know when a simple, cloudy solution might turn out to be the breakthrough of a lifetime. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as inspiring as I did, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell because we're going to be telling a lot more stories about the hidden figures of science and technology.
If this story made you angry, if it inspired you, if it made you wonder who else has been erased, then you need to subscribe to this channel right now.
Because if we don't tell these stories, who will? And if we don't remember these women, who else gets forgotten tomorrow?
They can steal credit, they can rewrite papers, they can dominate textbooks, but they can't stop us from finding the truth and sharing it.
That's why you need to subscribe to Women Erased. Let's rewrite history together.